Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about capstone project, mini project, minor project, seminars, and how all these are interrelated in helping us to solve the complex engineering problem, which becomes a core competence of development of curriculum and enhancing the students to reach the higher standards of learning as per the expectations of All India Council for Technical Education and NBA Tier 1 requirements. I am Dr. Vijay, working as Professor and Associate Dean Academics at Global Academy of Technology, Bangalore. So the mark distribution, if you look at criteria 2, the overall marks is 120, of which 55 marks has been allotted to these three categories, which are quality of student capstone project, seminar and mini projects, and solving complex engineering problems which incorporate sustainable development goals. So of 120 marks, 55 marks is completely focused on these three aspects, which plays a major role, and every program is intended to do this as a part of their curriculum. And how do we structure it in a well-defined manner, and how do we gain the outcome in a better way is all that we discuss in this discussion today. So quality of capstone, student capstone project, if you look at this, the capstone or the major project or the mini project for that matter will fall in the category of how do we define a project work to a student. So a capstone project or a mini project or a major project, we will have the allocation of guide or supervisor as a first step. And you have to have a detailed process of how do you allocate, how do you make group of students and how the guide is being allocated to these batches. Project classification. So once the project guide allocation and titles are freezed, you have to have the classification of projects into various categories depending on what your student capstone projects are majorly focusing on. You need to have a continuous improvement process, a review process. Say you can have in a semester two reviews, or in a year you may have 4 to 5 reviews where you periodically review the stepwise process of these capstone projects, which becomes a stronghold document on how the continuous internal process for validating the capstone project is done. Then you need to have the quality of the capstone project to be maintained in a certain manner. So how do you classify the quality of the capstone project? It may be with respect to the outcome of those projects, whether it is a working model, it fits in a patent, it fits in a product, it fits in a prototype, or it has led to certain publications or come out with an IPR. So depending on this, the quality of your capstone project will be reviewed. So to have all this as a solid proof of documentation, once we start the process for the program, we need to have a structured, transparent, and documented process, well defined and approved in all the committees that you have internally in your program. So methodology flowchart. Once a student enters a phase of a capstone project, how he is going to complete the capstone project, a complete flowchart from the start to the end has to be displayed in the program curriculum, and also you can take these approvals in the board of studies for any suggestions and improvements. There should be a committee which regularly reviews these projects, who develop the rubrics, who have the methodology of selecting the students in a group and also allocation of particular guide to these students. So all these is being done by a project review committee. A strong project review committee in the program is mandatory. Then allocation matrix, a rubric of how do you allocate a guide to a student based on the title has to be well defined, and maintenance of evidence to showcase with respect to the capstone project work is very much necessary. So all the process that we do on timely basis has to be recorded and all the evidences have to be present. So once all this is done, how do we showcase it? We should have a clear categorization and mapping of outcomes. So each of your project has to be tagged to a program outcome and program specific outcome. So you are basically doing a larger chunk of your credit of 160 in engineering is given to the project work, especially capstone project work. So defining or the title has to clearly focus on what are the skills that a student is going to learn on the program outcomes that is given in the scale of 1 to 11. So that clear mapping of title to program outcomes and program specific outcomes have to be maintained, and it has to be evaluated on a continuous process. So if a project are categorized into various categories, and if there are any projects which are multidisciplinary and industry led, you should highlight those projects to a greater extent. So well documented meeting procedure right from a start to the end, to the allocation of marks and how it is graded, all these meeting review, minutes of meetings, documentation process, SOPs have to be in place. So you will be having a multi-level review process, say two review per semester or five reviews per year. It depends on the project review committee on what call they are going to take on having the number of reviews. So all these review process has to be well documented. Allocation of internal and external reviewers, if it is there, how do you evaluate? What is the marking rubric? What is the mark allocation for each phase of review? All these things have to be well documented and presented. How to define high quality projects? So you're going to define the high quality of project only based on the outcome. As I suggested earlier, if a project is leaning towards a product, a working model, a prototype, you can categorize it in one quality. If a project is leading towards IPR or paper publication is another quality. If a project is solving a problem of a society or human challenges, it is categorized in another quality. So based on the outcomes of project, you will be categorizing and showcasing it in neat tabular form to the committee, whoever is going to visit you, stating these are the quality project outcomes that we have achieved with respect to the capstone project. So this all we will be doing in every program, but a structured manner of maintaining the documents and showcasing it is what all matters over here. So the second part, which carries 10 marks, is seminar and mini micro projects. So each course nowadays, when we look at the alternate assessment tools for continuous evaluation, we focus on providing various tools to evaluate a student based on various categories. So most of the courses have been given a task of doing hands-on experience or practical exposure to students so that they find the meaning with respect to practicality or by solving a certain small problems of a society or a human challenges. So all these problems can be categorized either course wise or a separate course for mini and micro projects as such, or you can also use this as a one of a tool of AAT for a certain courses well defined in a semester. So all these will fall in the category of your 10 marks of seminar and mini and micro projects. So again, for this, when we are defining mini and micro projects, either in the course or this as a separate course in itself, we need to have a structured process, a development of flowchart, how the mini and micro projects would be done, what are the nitty-gritties of this, how a student group is formed, what is the maximum and the minimum capacity of a student, how many reviews would we have, what is the rubric formation of this, and how it is being evaluated. A complete flowchart of this process should be available. So we have to link the topics of seminar to research papers. Generally, seminar we cannot give a general topic. It should be an emerging topic which is related or linked to a research paper, which will add more value and can be justified in a very well manner. A well-structured schedule and its compliances for seminar has to be well documented. So once you give a topic or a title related to the research, you have to have how many reviews are there and what is the process of outcome. So a complete documentation process has to be maintained and a evaluation rubric along with mapping of seminar title to PO and PSO has to be maintained. So to have a more clarity and in-depth understanding of carrying out this in a successful way, we need to integrate the seminar title to a existing research paper so that student will get to know how to do a research review, how to look at various papers in various journals, and what are the nitty-gritties of writing a research paper. So all this would be clear for a student through seminar. So the evaluation can have an industrial expert and guest evaluation as well, depending on the rubric that you have framed. So to maintain the high quality, or to maintain the transparency, a video recording of these seminars can also be done and made it as a repository in the program. So for mini and micro project, Proper project framework has to be designed, and this goes in line with a capstone project. So whatever we are doing in a capstone project at a larger scale, in the similar way, this will be done for mini and micro projects. So again, we will be classifying the projects over here depending on whether it is a project is application based, product based, development based, or review based, or what it is. We are going to classify the projects in mini and micro. Then mandatory mapping table for PO and PSO alignment has to be done for these projects. A strong documentation process, review, rubrics, number of meetings, guide allocation, student distribution, project review committee, everything has to be set in place. Then working models, if any, with respect to mini and micro project has to be showcased to a larger extent, which carries higher amount of marks. Why this carries higher amount of marks is very simple. If a student is able to do a project which is having a which is working in nature, it adds more value to the system, and also it gives a clear understanding to the evaluators that a student has completely understood a concept, and the faculty has taught it in such a way that all the outcomes for this project has been met. POPSO attainment has to be done for every mini and micro project. Quality indicators have to be looked in. Again, how do you classify the quality indicators? It depends on what are the outcomes of the project. And each of these projects have to be linked to sustainable development goals. So when you look at a complete chart of sustainable development goals, each of the project would address any one or two or three, depending on the title or the work, whatever you're doing has to be mapped to sustainable development goals, and these have to solve the problems of a society or any human challenges that have been facing in the current society have to be solved through these projects. So you can pick these projects problems and then give it to a student where it becomes a need of the hour and also helps the society in improving itself. So a student through these, if he participates in hackathons, project works, or any competitions, it has to be well documented and attached along with the report. A GitHub repository or open source contribution, if any, is available, then those documentation are also to be maintained. Interdisciplinary collaboration, multidisciplinary and industrial mini and micro projects, if are available, have to be showcased separately. So seminar and mini micro projects will help the students to build their competencies and skills in a very different manner. Seminars give student a voice. We are going to analyze how he is going to have his presentation, his communication skills, his way of expressing his thoughts and other things. And projects gives them the power to act. So when both are done right, education becomes transformation, not just information. So when we look holistically with accreditation processes, it is all done to enhance the quality of our education. And NBA Tier 1 has completely gone in depth to bring this into reality in Indian education system. And mini projects, capstone projects, seminars, whatever we have defined in our curriculum will all lead in a structured way to solve the problems of the society and can be integrated to a term known as complex engineering problem. So now we will discuss in brief about this complex engineering problem. So complex engineering problem is basically a solution that is devised by a student and a faculty guide where it is going to lead to the upliftment of a society and to make it more ease with the problems that we are facing today. So complex engineering problem is basically integrating of knowledge which uplift the society of various problems or challenges that have been faced today. So NBA Tier 1 focuses on solving problems of society and makes students the agents of change. So the basic fundamental idea of bringing in the complex engineering problem is, so when we are giving or a student is choosing or a faculty is giving a project work, either it is a capstone mini or micro or participating in any hackathons or any such kind of activities, we need to look at how it is going to benefit the society, how it is going to solve the problems of a larger scale for humanity and nature in general. So when we look at those aspects, the understanding of our curriculum knowledge and its practical application is going to go hand in hand, and the real outcome of education is going to be achieved. So this is what is looked at NBA Tier 1. It is not just solving of equations, but solving of humanities challenges. When your program aligns complex engineering problems and sustainable development goals, you are speaking in the language what a society is expecting us to do. So, what are the standards that are being expected for complex engineering problems? So, first thing is we need to identify the complex engineering problems, and then we have to integrate it across various parts of our curriculum. Complex engineering problem may be solved through some courses as an assignment or an alternate assessment tool. It may be through mini projects, major projects, and internships or various activities which you can club together. It has to be well structured and integrated into the program curriculum. Clear mapping of SDGs. So all the complex engineering problems will relate to one or the other SDGs, and a clear mapping of these complex engineering problems have to be done to sustainable development goals. So strong documentary evidence of implementation and outcomes has to be maintained in the program with respect to complex engineering problem. Now, how do we develop this complex engineering problem? So before understanding this, we need to define what is complex engineering problem. A detailed definition of complex engineering problem has already been given by IEA under GAPC 4.0. So we need to define a complex engineering problem first. So how do we define in common terms when I combine all the definitions of complex engineering problems? It is I can clearly make it simple in this way. A problem which has multiple constraint, no straightforward solution, which uses modern tool and multidisciplinary knowledge can be categorized under complex engineering problem. So most of our projects are multidisciplinary in nature. It will not have a single solution. It requires the usage of modern tools, and also it requires interdisciplinary knowledge. So in this regard, the hackathons, the project works, mini project, major project, capstone project, and any other course activities which requires a certain interval of time to solve can be categorized in complex engineering problem. So you need to identify the sources for collection of these problems. So from where do you collect these problems? It may be with respect to society, with industry, with the challenges that are faced by a certain uh, sect of humans, or it may be with respect to anything and everything that we look around. So if we can pick those problems and try to integrate and solve as a part of our curriculum, then it is integrated to complex engineering problem. Each complex engineering problem has to be mapped to sustainable development goals. All the processes and documentary evidences have to be maintained clearly. Now, how do we show that we have solved the complex engineering problem? So, well structured documentation of the collection or coming to a conclusion of this is a complex engineering problem through various collection resources has to be documented. So, once it is done, we should show the design, implementation phase, testing phase, and how it is being improved at various aspects have to be looked into. As an outcome, we have to showcase what are the constraints that we face during solving the complex engineering problem. It may be with respect to reduction of material usage, reduction in emission, cost reduction, economic valuation. So anything and everything that you have tried to bring it out as an outcome can be shown as the constraints that have been solved with respect to complex engineering problem. This is going to be a real output. It is not just going to remain on a paper as a black and white document. It is going to be a real output. This has to be integrated across the curriculum once the curriculum is framed with respect to the outcome based. Then we have to check for the quality indicators of complex engineering problems. Then look for continuous improvement. So complex engineering problem has to go on getting added with respect to various constraints and solving based on the certain level what we start at year one. So if we solve level one of complexity, then the next year the problem has to be modified and level two solving capability has to be built to the same set of students in next year, or if they pass out, the same problem can be given at a higher level of complexity to solve the real challenges to different batch of students. So when we heartily and holistically include or try to solve the complex engineering problems under the higher education framework of engineering, we are turning the classrooms into catalysts for a better world. And if we truly with a high spirit, try to implement this in our curriculum, then we are going to surpass any kind of higher education system in engineering across the globe and make Indian education system of engineering to look back and learn from us. So this is what the major understanding or the criteria for complex engineering problem, capstone project, mini and major project is all about as per the guidelines of NBA Tier 1. Thank you for listening. You can contact me over here for any other videos of NBA accreditation under Tier 1 can be looked at the link which is given over here. Thank you very much. Let's meet again in some other video.